सभी को नमस्कार. Very good evening to all of you. Thank you, Priya and Visalakshi. I had to stop her because they have pulled up something from some website probably and reading, and it was giving me old memories. I didn't remember I had done so many things. Anyway, this Bharat Higher Education Summit by two organizations, the Mahindra University, which is where we are today sitting here and listening to people, and also CIPU, which is an association of private universities. They have brought out a very important topic about how future leadership has to be shaped, how we have to move forward. Very important part for our country, especially when Prime Minister is talking about taking India to Viksit Bharat by 2047. It has great relevance. Well, before me, Dr. Yayulu Meduri spoke, followed by Dr. Gopal Pathak. Dr. Rahul Karar raised some issues. Some of them I would like to reply when I am speaking here. Then very spirited Mr. Murali and Dr. Suresh Garimalla, very shocked. But we had association in IIT Guwahati. We had an international conference on heat and mass transfer. He had come all the way from there. And then he was also the editor of that series of articles which were published in that. So we had a very early discussion with him. We have in the audience, of course, Dr. D.P. Agarwal, Dr. Pillai, Dr. Ishpirode, Sandeep Sancheti, and many others. I don't want to mention all of them. Ajita Kulkarni, Dr. Srivastav, and so on, so forth. So many vice chancellors. And this summit on building next generation leadership is very important. Now, first of all, what is this role of leadership? In my opinion, leadership are those who actually practice and then ask others to follow. So unless you do that, no one will listen to you. And that is true in case of classroom, teachers, teaching. Wherever you do, if we are not following what you are preaching, no one will listen to you. And that is the first principle. Therefore, many characteristic features which we want to build on our students from a variety of aspects. Dr. Murthy rightly said that it's not just the environment which is important, but we are creating future citizens. And so honesty, integrity, capacity building, innovation, research attitude, empathy, these are very important things which we should build when students are still in the college and university. In fact, it should all start from family at home, then in the school, then in the university and colleges. And for that, one of the finest programs which we derived for about last 5-6 years was about Universal Human Values Program. The first 3 weeks when students come into the college or university, freshman year, there are no classes. They must go through what is known as Universal Human Values Program. Right from getting up early in the morning at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, going to the playground, exercise, games, discussions, not computer games, but the real games, and then visiting to the nearby places of both historical importance, geographical importance, also to some of the industries, have sessions on healthcare, yoga, meditation, all of that as 9 modules will take the student to a different level when they come into the institution and get adjusted with the institution. That is the first part of that. So if we do that, I think that is the part where leadership has to play in terms of supporting faculty to conduct that. Many of you may have many other issues, but I will come to one by one some of those issues. Not all of them, because I don't know how much time is allotted. Otherwise, a slip will come and say that now your time is over. So I would like to cover as much as possible through that. Dr. Rahul, you raised some relevant issues. So for your information, way back in 2020 itself, we had set up a committee for setting up what is the minimum fee and what is the maximum fee, lower and upper limits for the fee. Headed by Dr. Justice Sri Krishna, was a justice in the Supreme Court. He had earlier also done the same task, so we called him in. He was initially not interested because he said whatever we do is not getting implemented for his youth. So I had to rope him in, and then he did excellent work. And based on that, all the state regulatory committee chair were also invited. Private universities were invited who are the affected party. And also state secretaries were invited. All their opinions were taken into account. Calculations were done on an Excel sheet as to maintain a minimum faculty-student ratio of 1:20, which AICT is advocating, and at the same time having minimum infrastructure in terms of equipment. What is that minimum which should be there? We are aware, we knew that some of the states were asking the private as well as government colleges to charge fee as low as 30,000 rupees. Somewhere here, I don't want to mention names of the states. And then still maintain high quality. Where does quality come from? So this issue was addressed, and that minimum maximum that report was submitted to the ministry. It was sent to all the state secretaries. But as usual, many of the laws which are enacted, some of the states will immediately say we don't accept it. Education being in the concurrent list, the government has no force to act upon some of the things. Some of the states, even the national education policy, they oppose. And then they will say, we will have our own state education policy. And some other committee is constituted. If you look at the final report of that committee, there is much not difference between what is NEP and the state education policy. Because what is done in education policy has included almost every aspect of it. Dr. Kasturi Rangan had visited at least several thousand cities as well as villages to elicit the responses. And all the features, whether it is multidisciplinary education in mother tongue, support for innovation and research, industry interaction, I think which state or which institute can oppose these kind of features? But still they will say we will not accept it. So forget about that. So the same case happened in the case of fee regulatory committee. For that, what needs to be done, I don't want to tell in the open platform. I still represent the government. You come to me privately, I will tell you what you need to do in order to get it implemented. Well, as far as the other issues which you are also considering about innovation and research and the support for all of this, gradually from the state of mind of the government that we have to support only the government institutes of national importance like IITs or NITs or IISc or something like that. Gradually, it is moving forward in the direction of whenever proposals are invited, they are seen from not the lens of government, but also where there is equality. And therefore, there have been a lot of changes which are happening. Still, long way to go. I accept it. The recent, one of the initiatives of PAIR program of ANRF, in which there were hubs selected. There were state public universities as well as some private universities were to be onboarded. They were not, but all the government institutions from the state, all the colleges are part of the spokes, and the hubs are some of the better institutions. They will require to give support, mentorship to other institutions. If this is taken forward to include also private colleges and universities, I'm sure as we pass by, there will be support in terms of research facilities as well as mentorship to do research. When I'm talking about research, one of the important things mentioned in the national education policy, there is a plus point and also some worrisome point. The plus point is the number of research publications from Indian universities, colleges has been rising year after year. And probably we are now the fifth largest number of research publications in almost all the fields, except one or two probably, but otherwise we have been able to do that. But when it comes to the quality of those research publications, they are still in quartile 2, 3, 4 journals, very few in the top 1/4 quartile journals. That is number one, which we need to address in order to improve the quality of publications. The second part, which was worrisome part, is two things. There have been cases reported about plagiarism. I think if faculty who are publishing their papers do not have that integrity, then how can they preach that integrity to our students? And therefore, this plagiarism is one. There have been retraction of papers year after year of many of the universities. Some of them find high rankings in the NIRF ranking. So I think we are developing a new model where universities' number of retraction papers will give negative marks, and thereby, even if they have got higher marks in terms of number of publications, some negative will balance it out. I think that is one of the things which is happening. We also talked about variety of regulatory bodies and the trouble which most of the universities and colleges face. I'm leading with only two examples. There is AICT, there is UGC, there is NCT, there is a Pharmacy Council of India, Council of Architecture. So if a university is running all such programs, I'm not talking about medical and law, which unfortunately is still left out from national education policy to be regulated by single body. But all these bodies, every year they come for inspection, and I know what happens during inspection, the unfortunate part. And therefore, how we can reduce all of this and have one single regulatory body called as Higher Education Commission of India, which is mentioned there with 4 verticals. Higher Education Commission of India having one vertical for regulatory function. Whether you run 5 programs, 8 different variety of programs, there is a single committee which will inspect even if inspection is required. Most probably, inspection itself should be virtual, online, rather than physical connect between the institute and the people who go as experts, avoiding corruption and many other things which happen. This is number one side. On the other side, how many times an institution has to suffer? Each time some committee comes, your classes are all disturbed, your administration is disturbed. So a single point of what we call as going once in a year. Second part is about data. And most of the times, an institution again suffers from submitting data to multiple agencies. All India Survey for Higher Education, which is from the Ministry of Education. Then you have AICT, you have to submit. If you have an engineering program, I mentioned all the regulatory bodies, each one of them asks the data. UGC asks for deemed university or private universities data. For ranking, you have to apply separately. If you want to get accredited, accreditation, whether it is NAC or NBA, again you have to submit. So at least there are 7 to 8 agencies where almost every year you feed the data. And if you look at the common denominator, 90% of the data is same. How many students apply, how many students are selected, how many graduate in this first lot in the same number of years as what it is, how many got employment, how many patents, how many research. This is the same data which is asked by almost all of them. So why not have one single portal where we collect data for all required things, sum total of the union set of all the required data from all the agencies, and then say that whoever wants whatever data, you draw from that through the APIs. So you have to give only once. Then obviously institute or university will take due care by picking up the data, collecting, compiling, double checking, triple checking if required, rather than 10 times different data is given by different people. And many times it is not given by the same man, and therefore, depending on the understanding of the person concerned, the data gets filled. And in many universities, it is not the faculty who are given charge for filling the data. They give it in turn to their clerical staff. And whatever clerical stance understanding is there, that is what reflects in the data. So I think, therefore, there is mismatch of data. So we are going ahead with what is known as one nation, one data. But there are still universities who give inflated data, fake data. That is also a possibility which continues. So we are developing a mechanism where through, we should not use the word crowdsourcing, but it is stakeholder sourcing, find out whether what data is submitted by an institute is correct or not. And what is your opinion about that? And if you give randomly 100 odd people, we get responses. And whatever is the closest response to the data, we can have an average of that and assume that that is the correct data, even though the institute has claimed something. And if the institute is always giving such high data, which is not what it is, in that case, the reputation ranking of the institution we would like to start lowering. initially on a scale of 0 to 1, we will give everyone equal opportunity, 0.5. If you are giving more honest data year after year, your rating becomes 0.6, 0.7, 0.8, 0.9. And everything that you give, we start respecting that data. On the other side, if someone is giving fake data repeatedly, it will become 0.4, 0.3, and we will not rely on the data submitted by such institutions for consideration in ranking or accreditation. I think this is use of technology. We can use even outliers using AI and then get to know about what is happening. So I think there are different reforms which are undertaken, which are in place. We all are aware of the unique APAR ID for all the students which we have started giving right from school to higher education, including those who are beyond education. Because in the industry, you require skilling, upskilling, reskilling if you want to continue to be in job. Otherwise, it will show you the way out. And therefore, even elderly people can join this ID, which we are calling as APAR, Automated Permanent Academic Account Registry, which is linked with Academic Bank of Credits, and every semester, every student, whatever they score in the form of semester-wise result gets accumulated there. And also beyond curriculum, whatever you are learning, maybe it's Microsoft certification, or maybe from a startup you have done some course, or you have gone for an internship in an NGO, or you have participated in competitions like Baha or circuit design competitions and earned, or we know about Robocon, which was held in MIT for a long, long time. So all those winners or participants should get credit because they would have spent a lot of time. I have seen for Baha and Robocon, students used to spend at least 6 months' time, rigorous work, and they learn many things through peer-to-peer learning. And why don't you value that as some, say, 5 credits and give some grade and then deposit it into the Academic Bank of Credits? If the university does not accept it to be considered as part of the curriculum and transcript, so be it, but at least the student can claim that he has done something extraordinary, apart from the mandatory courses that are there prescribed by the university. And thereby, when a student applies for higher studies within India, abroad, this carries heavy weight. In fact, many universities abroad don't consider your only grades as the input, but what all you have done beyond that is what is important. So this is a live dynamic CV of the candidate. It's on building, and therefore it is also valuable for people in the industry. You can also join if you do some additional course sometime. Please add it. TIE should conduct some courses of that nature, and we have this SWAYAM platform where people can put in some of the best courses which are there, and students can learn from their home. Today, technology enables that. You have internet, you have devices, so you can learn from the best professors, not just in India, but anywhere in the world. And those credits also can be transferred and kept into the Academic Bank of Credits. So these are some of the very interesting features which, as part of the national education policy, has been happening. But one thing which I wanted to convey and which is very important is about the teacher education. When we are talking about future leadership development, it should start with all individual faculty. I'm very happy even for the teachers at the lower level, for example, school and high school, you require DEd or BEd to be eligible to become teachers. When you come to higher education, maybe in arts, commerce, science, engineering, medicine, what you require is only master's or PhD degree and you can become a teacher. Many teachers for a long time struggle to become better teachers. Some of them who have come for teaching profession, not out of their keen interest in becoming a teacher, but because there were no other jobs possible, they will never try to learn better, and then they will not deliver what is required to be done for lifetime. And therefore, a faculty induction program kind of a thing, where 8 modules were developed for teachers to understand the entire process of the entire teaching, learning, pedagogy, what is their role as a teacher in the college or university, all those 8 modules, including internship in industry, and then practicing it for 1 semester, and some senior teachers observing what they are doing and how they are doing and tweaking with that if required, and giving advice and counseling, mentoring. a teacher becomes a well-rounded, good teacher. And without this, we said that they should not be regularized at all. Let them be contract teachers, temporary teachers till they do this. That means you will get what all is required as a teacher, and then you continue your journey and higher level courses from assistant to associate professor promotion, associate to professor level promotion. Thereby, the true leadership starts getting developed step by step in a ladder form. That is one of those things which is important. As far as NEP is concerned, teacher education has been given great prominence. Leadership is also given importance, and that's why even prior to NEP, there was a program called LEAP. Many of the IITs and IIMs and some of the central universities were given. It was a full 3 weeks program. 2 weeks were conducted in the university or the IIT where faculty were going, middle level leadership people. And then 1 week abroad in a university or a place where this particular institute has some kind of a collaboration. Maybe then it is MIT, it may be NUS, NTU, or any Australian university. Wherever you have a collaboration, you take all these 40, 50 faculty there and showcase what is the good practice, the best practice out of that. I think that program is also slowly transformed in a different way. Today, IIT Jammu is conducting some similar programs for faculty leadership development. But as far as the teacher training is concerned, we had 2 types of systems earlier in place. Madan Mohan Malviya Teacher Training and Research Centers, MMTTRCs, and then HRDCs, Human Resource Development Centers in some of the universities. And both were doing some work, but not effectively, and therefore ministry has amalgamated both these and now simplified the name as Malviya Mission Teacher Training Centers, MMTTCs. And starting from essential understanding of NEP itself, which is a challenge for many teachers and vice chancellors, to what all is required to be done by teachers in order to make life of the student comfortable, life of the student academically very good quality on the campus, including innovation research support system. That is what is to be observed and obtained from out of that. Apart from that, one more committee is constituted called as a revised ARPIT. ARPIT was a program which was run earlier, and under that, few very leading people are involved, and to make classes interesting, what all required to be done. How do you use technology, whether it is augmented reality, virtual reality, artificial intelligence, animation, simulation, visual effects, all of this which excites students in the classroom. How do you make use of it? How do you create content which is going to be exciting to become inquisitive rather than rote learning and just passing the examination? And therefore, also going into internship programs. All of this is part of that ARPIT program. So I think there are initiatives. Rahul ji, थोड़ा कभी-कभी हमारे वेबसाइट्स को भी देखते रहिए. नहीं तो कभी-कभी लगता है कि कुछ गवर्नमेंट कर ही नहीं रही है. ऐसा नहीं है, बहुत सारा कर रहे हैं. आपने लास्ट में तो बोल दिया कि पैंडेमिक में जो काम कमाल का काम किया और बहुत सारे लोगों ने वसुधैव कुटुंबकम आपने बोला. तो दैट वाज शोन बाय इंडिया during pandemic by giving our vaccines, which were developed in this very city by biotech industry, free of cost to more than 100 countries. And that is the spirit of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. Global family, one family. You are in suffering, we are also sensitive to your suffering. I think that is the spirit. 2 important statistics I would like to mention before I close. We had only 400 startups in 2014. Today there are 1,70,000.